for the emergency video conference meeting of Mount Pleasant Town Council for Monday, April 27th. We are past 6 p.m. The second order of business is the roll call. So please listen, unmute your mic, and clerk, if you'll conduct the roll call.
Good evening. Mayor Haney.
Present.
Mayor Haney is present. Mr. Chapman.
Present.
Mr. Chapman is present. Ms. Corley.
Present.
Ms. Corley is present. Ms. Hyatt.
Present.
Ms. Hyatt is present. Ms. Landing.
Present.
Ms. Landing is present. Mr. O'Rourke.
Present.
Mr. O'Rourke is present. Mr. Rambo.
Here.
Mr. Rambo is present. Mr. Santos.
Here.
Mr. Santos is here. Ms. Whitley.
Present.
Ms. Whitley is present. Thank you.
Thank you, clerk. The chair declares not only do we have a quorum, but we have 100% participation. So I want to thank everybody for being here, and I hope wherever you are is pleasant. Item number 3 is public comment, and we were all emailed the public comments that had to be turned in by 2 o'clock today, and they were sent in, and then any additionals or any late ones will be sent to us all tomorrow, and the ones that were here today will be entered into the record as having been made during this meeting. Item number 4 is an update on the operational status of the town from the town administrator. And Eric, I'll turn it over to you, but I just want to thank you and your staff. Y'all have been ahead of this from the start. I think the town is running exceptionally well. And not only do I feel that way because, of course, I'm partial, but I'm hearing that from people with other municipalities, too. So, Eric Demora, if you will take over and just give us a brief operational update, please.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you for the kind comments. To you, members of council, good evening. It's good to be with you. I think I'm proud to report, happy to report, that things are going very well operationally at the town. Things are strong. We have been able to meet the first 3 of our operational objectives, which were to maintain critical services to the public. We've been able to successfully do that and even enhance those critical services when we could. And what I mean by that is we were able to put additional resources towards the collection of vegetative debris, which this time of year becomes quite a chore. And at times in the past, we could get behind just keeping up with it being springtime and people cleaning their yards. But so our critical services are going very well. Like I said, we've been able to enhance where we could. In addition to that, we've also been able to maintain day-to-day operations. Morale is high, staff is working. As you all know, most of our employees are either required to be in the office or they're required to be in the field. And what I mean by that is your police men and women, firemen and women, public works, public services employees, sanitation workers, building inspectors. Many of them are on the job. So they're doing very well. For those who, where that is not a requirement, we have been able to maintain our day-to-day operations through teleworking, and that has gone very, very well. We haven't had to do this in the past, and so there were things we had to learn along the way, but it's worked out very, very well, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of our men and women at the town who have really made it all happen. There are very few employees who do not have the option of teleworking, and for them, thanks to the creativity of our staff, we have deployed many of them into the field to inspect public assets and public infrastructure. And our own employees developed the idea, and they developed an app, actually, where they go into the field and they check on the condition of assets like sidewalks or roads that maybe have been recently repaired. How are those repairs holding up? Lights, street lights, traffic lights. And so those are kind of the things that quite honestly, sometimes are tough to get to in the course of normal business. So we've been able to put just about everyone to work. So while we've been able to maintain operations, while we've been able to ensure critical services. The parts of the town that are not operating are ones that you know about. It's the court system. It's bringing in individuals who have a court date. It's things like boards and commissions. It's recreation programs. Those things are not operating. Our fourth operational objective was to mitigate as much as we could as a local government the economic impact on our community and on our businesses. And I believe we've been a very good resource to our citizens and our business owners. We have staff dedicated just towards business support. So I'm very proud of that. You know, there's a tremendous amount of information, much of which coming from the federal government that we've been able to line up our people with and hopefully be a good resource to them. Our last and our fifth operational objective is recovery planning. And it's something that we continue to actively work on. And it involves returning everyone to normal operations before the virus. And we're looking to do that through a layered approach where we bring parts of our operation back into town hall, say, in a way that we can do methodically and then assess how that is performing. And the value in that is if we have another spike in this particular virus, or if there's a different virus that comes our way, we would have a tested method of how we approached coming back to normal operations. If we find that, say in this particular outbreak of this virus, if we find that our employees are at risk, are exposed in some way, or members of the public are, because of something that we are doing at the town with our operations, because it's piecemeal, we'll be able to peel back the layers that we just weren't ready for yet. So, and by the way, you may be hearing as part of your discussion on park reopenings, you may see part of our fifth objective, our recovery planning, because the recreation department has done a good job with a phased plan of how to get back to normal. So you may be hearing that in a few moments. So, you know, the only thing really brand new to report is that antibody testing is available to our first responders starting this week. And of course that's voluntary, but you know, we're hopeful that there'll be some good aggregate information about that that will help us in our planning as we come out of the situation. So that's it in a nutshell. Things are going well, and thank you to you, Mayor, and to you, members of council, for your support and direction and leadership, frankly, on this. You've really made it all possible for us at the staff level, so thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Any questions from council? Questions or comments? Anybody before we move on? Yeah, Eric?
You asking me?
No, I was just asking, your screen just kind of did a little circle. So were you asking to have the floor, or was that just?
No, but
Okay.
since you called on me, Eric, I think the staff did a fantastic job and has been doing a fantastic job. So certainly I agree with all you said.
Great. Anyone else? Eric, during your talk just now, my screen went dead and IT came in here. I don't know if y'all could see me, but I couldn't see y'all, and they got me back. So I missed part of what you said, but I've been hearing it every day. So thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't miss anything directed to the chair, did I, during your talk? Okay. All right. Council, are we ready to move on to item 5, which is evaluation of the park reopening?
Yes, sir.
All right. Chairman Santos, since you chair that recreation committee, would you like to take it from there?
Absolutely. You know, first of all, before I start, I want to really give a good shout out to Steve and the recreation department staff, Chief Ritchie, all the work that he did with his officers. The combined effort was fantastic. I didn't have any negative comments from anybody. I went to all 3 sites. Everything just went really smooth. I was very impressed on how it went. So Chief Ritchie, we certainly appreciate all you did and all that your officers did, and Steve, certainly all your staff, all that you did and all that your staff. I think our pre-planning that we did ahead of time really was beneficial. In fact, I got a note from Steve that said it was well received and enjoyed by a lot of people. People observed the social distancing rules, and anyone that needed to be addressed cooperated without incident. Park West was used more than the other facilities, but all of them seem to be appreciated by the public. So what I'd like to do is, for those who really didn't get to see what all we did in phase one, I'd like to go over to phase one and then really tell you a little bit about phase two, because we're actually got 4 phases, but I can read all of them if you want, but since phase two is the next one, I can do that. But phase one, it had limited opening of outdoor facilities at Sherwood's Flowers, Jimmy Signia's Fields, and Jones Center Skateboard Park and Park West Recreation Complex from 8 to 7. Social distancing of 6 feet separation and limitations of 3 for a group sizes applied. No organized activities, team practices, personal training, exercise groups, etc. happened. Participants were required to keep moving, no loitering, lingering, blankets or chairs, picnics, anything of that was permitted. Tennis, pickleball facilities, restrooms, and playgrounds remain closed. Monitoring and enforcement of park rules conducted by recreation staff with the assistance of the police department, and continuation of essential goods markets with limitations on vendors and enforcement of social distancing guidelines. So that was phase one. I think it went perfect. I think it went really well. We got the chief and them here. If we'd like to ask them, I'll go ahead and go to phase two so everybody can understand that, and then give anybody an opportunity to discuss that if they'd like. All outdoor town parks and facilities will be open except as noted, subject to the following. Hours will remain from 8 to 7, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. All social distancing and gathering restrictions will apply. 6 feet of separation in groups 3 shall apply. Enforcement of distancing and gathering limits will be conducted by recreation staff with the assistance of the police department. Staff does not have to be present at all parks during all hours, but public presence will be there. No organized activities, team practices, personal training or exercise group, etc. People must remain moving. There will be no lingering, no blankets or no picnics. The tracks at Park West and Town Hall, as well as the circular path at Memorial Waterfront Park, will be set up so that all people must walk or run in the same direction. The same will be allowed at Shem Creek Park, meaning that people will not be able to walk towards the end of the pier, but will be able to walk to the connected portions of the docks in one direction. Signage will be posted to show the direction of the pedestrian traffic. Tennis courts at Whipple Road will be available for open play, no league play. Resumption of private and semi-private tennis lessons, 1 or 2 participants with an instructor. Outdoor pickleball courts at Park West, Marion Brown will be available for open play. The dog park on Rifle Range Road will be open for the folks that want to walk their dogs. I've got a lot of emails about people that really want a place to take and walk their dog, and that'd be a perfect place for them. Outdoor basketball courts will be open for individual play only, no basketball games. Restrooms will remain closed. Playgrounds will remain closed. Pitt Street will remain closed. The Pitt Street Park, per CCPRC, the pier at the Waterfront Park will remain closed. No outdoor special events, in the continuation of essential goods market with limitations on vendors and enforcement of social distancing guidelines. I hope I didn't read that too fast, but that's what phase 2 looks like right now. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them. Mayor, I'll ask you.
I mean, that sounds like everything's open. What can you tell us what phases 3 and 4 are?
Yes, I'll be happy to. Phases 3 will be all outdoor facilities open, limited resumption of indoor and outdoor recreation activities based on state and local guidance. Resumption of youth and outdoor athletics, T-ball / coach pitch season, adult softball track program. We have rentals of outdoor facilities for teams, offering of outdoor summer camps and limited indoor camps based on state and local guidance. Lap swimming / water aerobics with limitations on group sizes. Private lessons, music art, dance lessons in accordance with state and local guidance. Tennis league play will resume as determined by the USTA and in accordance with state and local guidance. No summer basketball league or open play basketball. No, the senior center will remain closed. Farmers market may resume a limited operation based on state and local guidance. No large outdoor special events like Blessing of the Feet, Party of the Park, Sweetgrass Basket Festival, and movies in the park. So that's phase 3, and I'll just go ahead and phase 4, which is very brief. Phase 4 is all town facilities and programs return to normal operation with the exception of the new event dates below. Blessing of the Fleet moved to June 28th. Party at the Park moved to Tuesdays in September. Cooper River Bridge Run moved to August 1st. And the Sweetgrass Basket Festival moved to August 8th. And so, Mayor, what I'd like to do is I'd like to make a motion that we approve phase 2. And we want to start it on Friday. We want to give staff an opportunity to get signs up and get staff set up for that so the police chief can do the same. Everything went so well that we feel very comfortable that this will be the next step, and we're ready to get moving as soon as possible. So I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Okay, hold on.
Gary,
Hold on.
Question.
Yes. Mr. O'Rourke.
Okay, Gary, I'll second, but I do have one question. We all received some public comments, and one of them I thought was kind of interesting by a citizen that walked at the Park West track prior to opening, before 8 o'clock. They did this before it was closed. And I waited until you mentioned that all of the parks may or may not be supervised. So if there were going to be times when it was unsupervised, I was wondering if there was any consideration to maybe allowing them on there earlier.
Tom, I'll tell you, we were very impressed with how people conducted themselves. They believed in the social distancing. I think I'll let Steve speak to that, but I don't think we had any issues. And anytime we saw something and said something, they immediately conformed. But Steve, if you want to weigh in on that, just about how well everybody did, and I certainly don't have a problem with them walking on the track earlier. I saw the same email that you did.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Councilman Santos. Yeah, I will chime in on that. Good evening, everybody. I want to let you know, as Gary mentioned, it did go very, very well. Had no problems whatsoever. The times were really set by when we were staffing it. And because in phase 1, we were staffing all of our facilities. And so we were setting the hours of when they could use it based on when our staff were scheduled to be there, because staffing was a part of the requirement. In phase 2, for the sake of having consistency, we were using the same hours. We were promoting it under the same hours, which is generally sunrise to sunset. But it would not necessarily be a staffed facility. We would be making rounds. We would be going to places. I probably would have somebody at Park West most of the time because it's such a busy place. But we would be just going around different places, and it wouldn't necessarily be staffed. So as far as that's concerned, from the recreation standpoint, there's not necessarily a beginning of the time. If it would really be up to council unless you wanted it to not occur until staff or somebody was around that area, or you wanted to restrict the times. We were just leaving. We were basically proposing phase 2 as being an extension of phase 1, just with more facilities.
All right, did I hear a second? We have a motion. Okay.
Yes, I seconded.
All right, so we're in discussion, council members.
Yes, I have a question for Steve.
All right, Mr. Chapman, you have the floor.
Steve,
Yes.
how many employees have been able to work with this new opening of some of the parks? And would it be helpful for them to have some more time to work at their job?
Actually, Mr. Chapman, Councilman Chapman, that is we have been doing very well on that because of the facilities being closed. While our facilities are closed and while we are not offering programs, we actually have staff that are capable and able to do that. It's not a problem with staffing these facilities as we have been. So that hasn't been too much of a problem. We have staff that are able to continue to make preparations for future programs, but we have plenty of other staff that we've been able to use to staff these facilities at those locations. So that really hasn't been a problem for us.
Well, for example, how many did you have out yesterday?
Yesterday, we have 2 at each of the 3 locations and 2 shifts. So there were 6, that would be 12 people. And then 2 more Alhambra and 2 more so at Waterfront Park. So that would be 16 people that we used yesterday staffing our different areas. And then, of course, a couple supervisors were driving around and monitoring and checking on areas. But
so if it was suggested during phase 2 to start with, to have staff at all locations, how many more would that be?
I apologize. I have not added up all of the facilities, but we have a lot of facilities. If you were to count every trail, every park, every ball field, and every location that we have, there's I know it goes through the alphabet more than once. So as far as that, when we have them labeled, there's got to be 35, 40 different ones. And if we were open to close for all of them, I would probably need 70, 80 staff to be able to staff every one of them. So that was not the intent of staffing each one of the facilities, but.
Okay, I just bring that up because we don't know what's going to happen with phase 2. Nobody does. And I'm glad to hear that there was very good compliance with the phase 1 beginning. My concern would be that it might end up being an overburden on the police department by not having sufficient recreation staffing at some of these. And I wouldn't mind hearing Chief Ritchie weigh in on that too. But I think it's great, and I think phase 2 would probably do just as well as phase 1. But I'm just thinking out loud about what impact this might have on the police department. And again, I'd like to hear what Chief Ritchie might have to say on that.
Certainly, Mr. Chapman, I'm on now, and good evening, everybody. Steve and I have worked very close with phase 1, discussing all the other phases. And I think with his staff that he has now, and the way we've got it set up, it's really the larger parks that we're really wanting to make sure we have staff. Some of these smaller pocket parks, we as a police department aren't as concerned about. I have district units that can ride by those on a regular basis. My motor units are checking those areas on a regular basis. And then the larger rec areas, be it Waterfront Park, Park West. I have bicycle officers and officers on ATVs assigned that are very mobile, can get around. So we can get a lot done with 1 or 2 officers and a couple of rec staff members, and we do it very efficiently. And if I had to call another staffing, I could. If you remember, sir, the schools are now out, so I have about 16 SROs that are helping us out, filling different spaces as we need it. So we can certainly support Steve and recreation staff in making this go smoothly.
And so you're satisfied in terms of the, I guess, a little more limited staffing during phase 2, that your officers could handle whatever issues came up as extra issues.
I am, sir. Steve and I have had that discussion, and again, his intent is to have some of his staff mobile as well at some of the smaller parks. And then with the larger parks, if we run into an issue, if he has 1 or 2 staff members, we provided them radios, and they can call us, and we're over there within minutes to assist. So I think we've got a pretty good plan, and I'm very confident that we can assist.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Council members, next. Hello,
Yes, I'd like to say there.
is that Kathy?
Kathy?
Yes, you have.
Yes, it is. Hello. Thank you very much. So the main thing I wanted to say is that I'm really excited that we're going to move forward with phase 2. yes, we can pull back if we need to.
Kathy, let me stop you. We haven't voted to move forward yet. It's a
Oh,
mo-
no, I know. No, I know. That's the vote, though. That's what I'm saying. If we move forward with phase 2, that's what we're discussing now, that this will be an opportunity for a lot more of our children, young people, et cetera, and even adults to get out and get fresh air and exercise. There's a lot of us that have places that we can exercise. There's a lot of us that have neighborhoods where we can run and do other things, but there are a lot of people that don't. And I think there's been so much focus on protecting from being exposed to the virus, but maybe not much talk at all about building our own body's immunity. And the reality is, I'm not a doctor. I'm just saying I've been listening and reading like all of you have. And a strong immune system starts with exercise, fresh air, getting out, getting a lot of oxygen. So we know there's folks that are very much at risk, and they need to stay in and they need to stay home. But our young people and children need to get out in the fresh air and sunshine. So I'm very excited, because when I rode by the other day, I only go out like once a week for groceries, but I did ride by Waterfront Park. I rode by Alhambra just to see, and everything was still closed up. And it will be great for people to be able to get out and get a little bit more fresh air and exercise.
Thank you. Council members, next. All right, Steve, while you're there, I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
All right. I wrote down in my notes, how many, if this passes, how many total facilities did you say would be open? Was it 35 to 40?
I apologize, Mayor Haney, I do not have that answer for you. There are quite a few. Yeah, I would say it's probably in the 35 to 40 range, the number of facilities. I was just picturing our brochure, and I know we have all the facilities listed in alphabetical, facility A, B, C, D. And I know we go through more than the alphabet and go up to double K or something like that in our listings. So
Right.
probably in that range.
Okay. All right. And so this past weekend, what did we opened parts of 3 parks, right?
Yeah, we opened 3 large areas. We opened Park West,
Right.
which was used quite heavily. But like I said, heavily, but still wasn't very crowded because it handles people so well. We opened the Jimmy Signius Fields with the adjacent skate park next to it.
Right.
And we opened Cheryl Woods Flowers. So 3 of our large parks, one on the north side, one in the central part of Mount Pleasant, and one in the south side of Mount Pleasant.
Okay. So one of my concerns with this is just the magnitude. We talked about doing things in layers and doing things in phases, and we're going from 3 to 30, 35, 40 or whatever. I think that is a huge jump, and that's a concern of mine. Let me ask another question. I heard Waterfront Park in there, and I have not seen this. When I heard Councilman Santos talking about it first, I've heard of what phase 2 is. Would this open the all the parking at the Waterfront Park, all the parking lots?
We have not discussed parking. Chief Ritchie, you might want to chime in on that. My expectation is it would. We already have the parking under the bridge, and in the large lot C, the grass lot has been opened already. And my expectation is, yes, we would open up the lot under the bridge as well. But Chief Ritchie, you may want to expand on that.
Certainly, Mayor. We have had to open the park lots beneath the bridge near the walking path to the Ravenel Bridge. We started with a smaller one last weekend, and it was a direct response to Patriots Point Boulevard. We have so many folks parking up and down Patriots Point Boulevard, and include double parking at fire hydrants, that we didn't feel was safe anymore. It was a public safety issue as we started monitoring it. So we opened that smaller parking lot. Folks started using it, gave us some relief to Patriots Point Boulevard. Over the weekend, my captain, who was covering Patriots Point area, let me know it was getting busy again, starting to pick up. We opened the second lot, and it was able to take some of that pressure off of Patriots Point Boulevard. And those folks that were using the park lot still respected the barricades and barriers up and didn't enter either the big grass lot near the C parking lot or Waterfront Park itself. And the few that did find their way on, rec staff did a good job addressing those folks, and we're able to move on.
All right. So, but if we open the walkway and the greenway at Waterfront Park, we're going to have to open the parking lot, right?
We'd open, I believe that's A lot, the one nearest the The park itself, yes, sir.
Okay, so those would be the big ones. So we had a staff member today said that when they were coming over the bridge, they counted over 280 people on the bridge at one time, and that's without the major parking lot being open. And my concern is if we open that parking lot, and everybody knows, and if you're listening, if you're a member of the public, we cannot close the bridge, the pedestrian path on the bridge. That's state transportation infrastructure. It's not recreation infrastructure for us or Charleston. I have a big concern that number is going to go from 200 and something to 500 or 600, because remember, the beaches are not open yet. And the pressure on our waterfront park and on the bridge and everything, with the beaches not being open, I think is going to be pretty substantial. So that would be a concern of mine.
And Mayor, if I could, just to let you know, there's parking on the city side as well. And a lot of those people were using the parking. I had to go downtown, and a lot of those people are using the city side parking. So when you see people on the bridge, that doesn't mean they're parking in Mount Pleasant.
Right.
A lot of them are parking over in the city, walking over, and then coming back to the city. So just so you know.
I agree. And my concern is that there is no way to maintain social distancing on that bridge. People have to pass shoulder to shoulder, and we can't close it down. But they're exposing our residents, whether they're Charleston people or not, they're potentially exposing our residents to the virus, which puts our community at higher risk. And the more people, the more increase of the risk. But anyway, I've got a couple more questions. Mr. Paglarini, are you on? Mr. Paglarini? Hello?
Right here. Yes, sir.
Okay. When we were dealing with this last week, would you go back and tell us that the standing order, unless it's been rescinded, of the governor in his executive order is we cannot allow sports that have shared equipment? And here we're talking about tennis and pickleball. And if you would just clarify that for us, please.
Right, Mayor. And we discussed this a little bit at the planning committee meeting. There are no specifics, and specifically at the committee, we discussed tennis and pickleball. I assume that there's a way to do that with using individual tennis balls or whatever ball is used for pickleball, but that would largely be an enforcement issue, Mayor.
Does that involve 4 players for pickleball or just 1 on each side of the net?
I'm going to have to pass that on to the pickleball experts because I don't.
4 players, Mayor. And I will tell you also, I coached for 37 years, and I know whenever I told my kids in football to get their equipment on, they grabbed their helmets, their shoulder pads. They didn't grab the football. Same with baseball. You tell your catcher to get his equipment on. He's got face masks. He's got chest protector, knee pads. That's basically equipment. The ball, they don't get the ball. So for me, I think that's the distinction there. Equipment is more something that you put on yourself. Yeah, you don't want to share that stuff, but a ball in your hand, I think that's not really equipment. I think it's part of what the game, but certainly not equipment that people would be putting on themselves and sweating and things like that in.
Okay, and then did I hear right that this does also open basketball courts?
That's not only individuals shooting, not teams playing. Only individuals out there, father, son out there shooting some hoops, but no games, no team play.
Right, and when you're talking about Shem Creek Park, which part of Shem Creek Park are we talking about?
All right, so they will start in right where that little building is, where when you come in, you turn off of Coleman, and you'll walk around and come back out and exit by the bridge. So there'll be no passing. It'll only be going one way, and you won't go all the way down to the end. You're going to be walking around, and then you'll come out by the Shem Creek Bridge. So nobody will be passing there.
Okay. And then if you go back over the motion, this is to begin when? Friday? Did we get that right?
Yes, sir. We wanted to give staff and our police department and recreation department time to set it up and staff it and get signs out there as well. So yes, sir. Friday is when we're looking at doing it. Okay.
I would just pose a question to council members. We got the numbers. I'm looking at a 2-week trend of the number of confirmed cases and the number of estimated cases by DHEC in the town of Mount Pleasant. That's our 3 zip codes, 466, 429, and 464. And I understand that the soft opening of phase one went well. I'm sorry, my computer screen keeps falling, but phase one went well, and people did very well. And I think that's a tribute to our staff and the way we had them staffed. But I would like to know, are we doing this based on the level of risk of exposure in our town and the trends of the virus that caused all that? Or are we doing that because 3 parks went well for Saturday, Sunday, and Monday?
Well, I think the 3 parks that went well is indicative of how the rest of it's going to go. The people really monitored themselves. They did the social distancing, and we didn't have to really say anything to many of them. I mean, I think it went really well, and that was very encouraging to us, is that they abided by the rules, and it went very well. And I think this gives them an opportunity to do some more. Our citizens are screaming for more things to do. They want to get out. They want to be able to walk the parks. They want to be able to get out with their children and do things. And I think the way they conducted themselves, I think it was like a litmus test at the very beginning to see if they were going to obey the rules and obey what we wanted them to do. And they did. And so it was very encouraging to us to open up more now to let them out, because if not, you're going to have more people pack up into those 3 parks, which is going to cause more problems because everybody's coming to 3 parks. Whereas if we spread it out a little bit more, you'll have people going to different areas. And I think that'll allow us to have more spacing. But the citizens really did what they were supposed to do, and it showed us that they're willing to do the social distancing and everything that we've asked them to do, and it was very encouraging. So we're ready to move forward.
Understand, I guess from my standpoint, if we were talking about doing a little more and doing it in phases, I could certainly get behind it. We're talking about going from 3 facilities open to, according to Steve, 35 or 40 facilities. That's an order of magnitude. I thought that our phase 2 plan would be open, something bigger, open maybe parts of the ones that worked well this weekend, but we're throwing everything open, and we're going to open, courts for potentially people to walk out there with team sports. And we know the old mantra, it's easier to get forgiveness than permission. People are going to pick up basketball games. People are going to play doubles tennis and doubles pickleball. And then, the governor's order says no groups larger than 3, and we're saying we'll open pickleball courts and 4 people can play. And that's what the motion is. And I'm not offering an amendment to the motion, but we're saying we will allow a group of 4 when a standing executive order says no groups larger than 3.
Yeah, but how do you define a group? You've got 2 people on either sides of the court. I mean, how close do you have to be before it's considered a group? To me, that's not a group when you've got only 2 people on either side. It's like Alhambra Hall. People want to go out and walk their dogs in Alhambra Hall. They'll do the social distancing. That's critical. I mean, those people down there want Alhambra Hall opened, and I think that needs to be. Some of these parks that Steve talks about are smaller parks, Edwards Park, and they're not the bigger parks. So you're not going to have people from all over coming to those places. As long as we can spread it out where they can go around their homes, you're not going to have a whole lot of people. And like I said, the basketball, when you have the rec department going by and the police going by and they see something like that, they can end it right there, and then we can always ban it. But I think people are smart enough to know that if they do push it, then we're going to close it and they're going to ruin it for everybody. So I think we proved it over the weekend that they're going to listen to us and they're going to do what we're asking them to do, because they certainly don't want us to close them down.
Okay. Let me finish my remarks, and then we'll see if y'all want to vote or somebody wants to be recognized. On April 13th, according to the figures given to us by our emergency coordinator, there were 92 cases in Mount Pleasant in the 3 zip codes, and there were an estimated 657 cases estimated by DHEC. Go forward 1 week to Monday the 20th, it went from 92 to 104 cases and confirmed, and from 657 estimated to 700 estimated. Jump forward to today, there are 110 confirmed and 786 estimated cases. So in 2 weeks, we've gone from 657 estimated to 786 estimated, and from 92 confirmed to 110 confirmed. And so this virus is not going down and not going backwards in the town of Mount Pleasant. And I'm not willing to open 35 or 40 parks because we did well with 3 when this virus is on the increase in our community, and that's why I can't vote for this motion.
Well, I think out of 90,000
Mr.
people.
Mayor?
Hang on just a second.
Numbers are low.
Those who haven't spoken yet get to be recognized first. Who's asking to be recognized?
Jake,
All right, Mr. Burrows, you have the floor.
a couple things. One.
Rambo, I'm sorry. I don't know what came out of my mouth. Mr. Rambo.
No,
He gets called a lot of things.
A couple of things. One, I know in the actual phase 2, Gary, I know that Tom touched on this, but it says 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. So I don't know if it needs to be an official amendment. Mr. Pagliarini, I don't know if you can answer this, but I think we should change that from dawn to dusk. I mean, I don't see a problem with somebody working out at 7 a.m. versus 8 a.m. I don't know if that needs to be an official amendment or.
Yeah, Mr. Santos, what was the intention of your motion?
Well, I was just reading what we had done in phase 1. It was from 8 to 7, but certainly if you want to move it up back an hour, I'm fine with that.
Okay, Mr. O'Rourke, would you agree with that?
Yeah, yes.
Could somebody clarify what back an hour means? Back for open, back for closing, sunset to dusk?
Going back from 8 o'clock to 7 o'clock.
In the morning or the evening?
Morning.
So 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Is that the amended motion?
7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay, so is that your amended motion, Mr. Santos?
It is, yes, sir.
Okay, so Mr. O'Rourke, are you seconding the amended
Yeah.
motion? All right.
Yes.
So we have an amended motion that it is from, hang on just a second, let me write this down. From 7 a.m. till 7 p.m., is that correct?
Yes, it is.
All right. All right, so we have an amended motion and a second. Mr. Rambo, you have the floor.
All right, so that was my first thing. The second thing I wanted to point out on the date, as far as Friday, Friday also happens to be May 1st, which is the same date that the state and county parks are opening as well. So I don't think we're not going out on a ledge where nobody else is. That both the state and the county parks are all going to be opening on May 1. So I think it makes sense for us to open our areas at that same time. As far as the density concerns that have been brought up, or the concerns about too many people in one spot and not social distancing, I think it's somewhat of a misnomer. Like, in one way, yeah, you can say that for going from 3 parks open to 30 parks open seems like a huge jump, but really, when you have less places open, you have less places for people to go and spread out. When you open more places, you have much more opportunity for green space, much more opportunity for spacing. I think it will work out very well. And then I also think that we need to be very careful. I know we're talking about enforcement and things like that, that we're not over policing. You know, you read articles about, and I'm not saying that our officers are over policing, because I know they're not. But I don't think we can go around and be the social distance police every second of the day. You read articles about, people getting arrested in other areas, moms getting arrested for taking their children to the playground, and I think it's gotten a little bit out of hand. And we not only have to consider the virus itself, but we also have to consider people's overall health. And I've spoken with a few different medical doctors in different fields, and they were all very much in support of this plan, opening parks, and just that getting outside, exercising promotes good physical and mental health, a strong immune system that Miss Landing pointed out as well. So those are my points on that.
All right, next.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, you have the floor.
I think there's some inconsistencies in the entire town, for example. If we were to count cars at the parking lot of the bridge, I think there's more at Costco, or maybe Walmart or something like that. The other thing is, I walk through Snee Farm every day, and I have to go from my house. I pass the tennis courts and golf course at Snee Farm. Tennis courts at Snee Farm are full all the time, and people are playing, and everybody's paying attention. when I get to Sneak Farm, there are bicycles, walkers, everything. So I think that people are going to do this anyway. I like the stance that the city of North Charleston took. They really didn't take a stand by saying this is closed or this is open. They sort of just didn't program the parks like we're not doing right now. But if somebody lives across the street from a park, they can go walk in their park as long as they stay 6 feet away and everything else. So I personally do not see opening more as a problem. I think it spreads it out a little bit more, like Mr. Rambo said. So I just wanted to throw that in there for the record.
Next. Anyone else?
I'd like to say something else, Mayor, if I may.
Ms. Lanning?
Hello. Yes, hello. So I just want to make sure that our citizens, and especially those that are on tonight, but everybody, knows that none of these decisions are being made easily or callously. And I do think that one of the things that's a really scary part of the equation are these possible cases. I think it's important that people know that the possible cases are estimates. And a lot of this comes from this original model that was done out of Washington. And what's been shown over and over again is that in most parts of the country, not necessarily New York City and places where it's really been tragic and where we've really seen, because of density, because of mass transit, we've seen a lot of cases. But in a lot of places, the numbers have had to be brought back down. The models were way too aggressive. And why that's important to Mount Pleasant citizens is we have 90,000 people there. Is it extremely important that those people who are at risk, whether it be, I mean, we're all at risk to some degree, but we're all at risk every day of our lives when we walk out the door or even when we get up out of bed. Is it more risky right now for our children and our young families to be out in the park getting fresh air? Or is it more risky for them to be staying in the house cooped up and getting more and more frustrated and depressed? We're at a turning point where I think we're seeing that Mount Pleasant's number of cases overall has been pretty low. I mean, actually quite low. And thank goodness for that. And thank goodness that the social distancing has had some impact, but I think it's time. I think it's time our people be able to get out and do their thing and live their lives and exercise and get fresh air. And by the way, I personally think anybody who can run on the bridge or even walk all the way downtown on the bridge probably has really good lung capacity.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean they're not spreading the virus. Does anyone else want to be recognized right now?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Chapman, is that you?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I want to get back to Steve again, if I could, please, Steve Burgess.
Yes, sir.
Steve, are there any locations specific that you think could be pared back a little bit because they might be more active than others?
The only areas at all would be an area of concentration, possibly in basketball or something along those lines where, trying to, and if the area is not staffed, being able to enforce the control over whether somebody's playing a game or not would be difficult to monitor. The larger areas actually are really good. Where the places where people go, there's a lot of space. Sherwood's Flowers, opening up Carolina Park, and some of those other areas just provides more space to spread out that much more. And there are no organized activities. Now we are not allowing any teams or soccer practices or games or baseball practices or anything like that. We are still maintaining the group sizes of 3 or less, and the social distancing. So there's no scheduled activities to bring in large groups, and in individual groups doing their activities. I really don't have very much concern about the spacing or being overcrowded in any areas because we're able to spread them out pretty well.
Well, you already mentioned one in particular where there could be a tendency to do more than we think they should do. Are those areas going to be staffed?
No, those areas would not be staffed. The outdoor, if you're talking specifically about our outdoor basketball courts, they would not be staffed the entire time. They would be roving people that would be going through. So there would be a presence. The police department would be aware, we would be aware, and we would be roving by. And the areas what we're talking about is Marion Brown. We're talking about the Remley's Point Community Center and the Green Hill Community Center.
Green Hill, yeah.
Some of those places don't have any other recreation alternatives.
No, I think we ought to have those open. I'm not saying don't open them. I'm saying to make sure that we get the type of social distancing that we should, so we don't get criticized. So we don't have somebody in the press go by and say, oh, town's not looking after that. And the only reason I'm asking these questions is, in the event we do have some issues, we need to have a fallback plan that makes us look like we have a way to control this major expansion. And I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying we as a town need to be respectful of what we think needs to happen, but we also need to be able to protect all of our citizens by having some way in which to fall back to maybe a lesser number in the event that that happens. And again, it's gonna be staff critical in order to have the ability to do that. I understand that, which is why I asked the question I did early on about, is this going to be staffed by recreation? Do we have enough people out there? Is the police going to become part of the recreation staff because we don't have enough out there? I'm just making these points. I think we need to have a fallback in case there is an issue that comes up, because the first time the beaches were opened up like this, that it was, Katie bar the door. I think it's great to expand the availability of space. I probably take advantage of it, but I also think we as a town need to be careful to have sufficient staff available in the event that that does happen, and to have a fallback position in case it's overused.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to call for the vote, please.
Is there anyone else who would like to be recognized to speak?
I'd had a question.
Yes.
Laura. Okay,
You
so
have the
playgrounds
right.
will remain. You got it?
Ed?
Playgrounds remain closed? Just open spaces open?
Yes.
Yes.
And so for the waterfront park, the pier is closed and the playground is closed, but just the open space is there?
Yes.
Okay, and they won't be able to picnic or anything. They'll just be able to walk around and not be on the pier, right?
Right.
And no playgrounds. Okay. Thank you.
One follow-up question on Waterfront Park, if I may.
Is that Mr. Rambo?
Yes, sir. Sorry, just one follow-up question on Waterfront Park. We keep talking about the pier, but correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't the pier run by the Charleston County Parks and Recreation, or is
That's correct.
So opening of the pier would be their decision, not ours?
Right.
Correct?
Right.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to put that out there because I know a lot of people want the pier open, but we don't have that ability.
Just like Laurel Hill.
Yep.
Anyone else?
I call for the vote, ma'am.
Yes, but when someone wants to be recognized and they have a right to speak, then you can call for the vote. All
I
right.
think I can call at any time. David, let David tell us.
If someone has not been recognized, they have the right to be recognized to speak before we shut off debate. Now that everyone has spoken, we will call for the question. And a yes vote is to approve phase 2 of the reopening of parks as amended. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chapman.
Aye.
Mr. Chapman votes yes. Ms. Corley.
Aye.
Ms. Corley votes yes. Ms. Hyatt.
Aye.
Ms. Hyatt votes yes. Ms. Landing.
Yes.
Ms. Landing votes yes. Mr. O'Rourke.
Turn your mic on, please.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Aye, yes.
Mr. O'Rourke votes yes. Mr. Rambo.
Yes.
Mr. Rambo votes yes. Mr. Santos.
Aye.
Mr. Santos votes yes. Ms. Whitley.
Yes.
Ms. Whitley votes yes. Mayor Haney.
No.
Mayor
So
Haney votes no.
by a vote of 8-1, the motion passes. Mr. Paglarini, let me ask you, what form does this take? Is this an ordinance of council? How does this get enacted, and what does it take to change it?
Mr. Mayor, this is really just a voice vote special for policy. I don't believe we need anything, but if we had to characterize it, I just call it a voice vote in order of council. And we can put it in writing as necessary.
Okay. And so if the weekend does not go well and people want to make some changes or close a few here or whatever, does that take a vote of council, or how does that work?
Well, I think we take the same route that we have, and that is either you can do it by proclamation or a council can weigh in once again.
All right. Everybody clear on that? All right. So we move on to item 6. Report on estimating the impact of COVID-19 crisis on town finances and considerations for proceeding with meetings to adopt the fiscal 2021 budget. Tom, I think we made clear we were not expecting you to come in tonight and say, here's what we're doing, but we just wanted to think about, what do we need to look at? How many, budget committee, finance committee, there'll be some telltale indicators I'm sure that Marcy can probably tell us about that'll give us an idea. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I think we all know that this budget is going to be unlike any other budget that we've done in a long time, maybe ever. So because of that, the Finance Committee is going to schedule a meeting. We'll, at the conclusion of this meeting, especially after item number 8, I think we'll have a better handle on when that meeting will be called. And then once we do that, we as a council are going to have to sit back and listen to a plan by Eric and Marcy as to how to move this forward and help us make some pretty tough decisions, I think. So I think we all know that it will be unique. I think we all know that revenues are going to be down substantially. And I think we all know we have work to do. So what we will do is, I've already spoken to Eric and Marcy and they are prepared. We just have to make sure that we have the meeting set, and we may even be able to have that set before the end of today's meeting, if not by tomorrow. So that's where we are with that.
And I'm sorry, were you talking about a finance committee meeting or a budget committee?
I'm sorry, a finance committee meeting. But if the council doesn't want to do that, I think the whole finance, because the whole council is the budget committee.
Right.
The finance committee does not make the budget at all.
Right.
What we thought we would do, but we don't have to, is to kind of discuss whatever that plan is going to be as it comes to the finance committee. But we don't need to do that. We can have a budget committee meeting as opposed to the finance committee for this. Either way, the council wants to go on that.
Okay. And just so everybody knows, if you're watching, we end our fiscal year on June 30th. And so, Eric, if your mic is on, last week we were looking and talking about this, and we thought we might end the year kind of at a break even without there being any deficit. Do we still think that today? Because I know things change rapidly, and we're talking about the year we end on June 30 of 2020.
That's right, sir. You're correct. Preliminary estimates, and I stress that those comments were preliminary, but we feel at the end of the year that we'll be able to meet budget with what has already come in and what revenues we still anticipate to receive. Once again, your department managers have managed their budgets very well, and we expect to return money on the expenditure side, which will help. The biggest obstacle, and Mr. O'Rourke alluded to this, is the financial picture for next year, where we anticipate just about every revenue category being impacted to some degree. And so that's going to be the challenge.
Right. We know that the city of Charleston is projecting as much as a $42 million, not a deficit, but a decline in revenues. But they're more heavily financed by accommodations, hospitality tax than we are. But we probably won't get an idea of what that's going to look like for us till what, after July, I guess?
Well, yes, sir. Our revenue categories, each of them are different, and they come in at different times throughout the year.
Right.
So some of them, like property taxes, come in after the first of the year, which gives us limited window to make adjustments if expectations aren't being met. So they're staggering in, but the general idea, much like we were talking about returning to normal operations through a layered type plan, is very similar with the budget. It is to have phases or tiers of action depending on the severity. We've already taken action now. You're going to see more recommendations in the proposed budget, different from what you received weeks ago, that are helping to prepare the organization for the impact. And then there'll be layers dependent upon the severity of drops in revenues.
Okay. All right. Mr. Chairman, any more on that? Tom?
No, sir.
Okay. Any questions from any council members?
Yes, sir, Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Chapman, you have the floor.
Mr. DeMora, over the weekend, we saw a pretty substantial headline that the state of South Carolina, through the governor, is expecting $2 billion from the federal government to help with the COVID-19 issues. And we had this discussion together a couple days ago. It'd be helpful, I think, for a lot of people to hear, while the state might be getting $2 billion, what might that do for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The funding that's been given to the states, that's administered by the states, and will be, a portion of it at least, passed down to local governments.
Julia is now joining.
Is much like public assistance money offered through FEMA, and it typically covers, almost always covers, expenditure-related items, expenses that were incurred during a situation. And that's where this phase of funding rests. And we do have expenses. We have incurred expenses through this, and that money will be helpful to us, there's no question. But the biggest impact for us is going to be on the revenue side of the ledger. And so far, at least from what we've been, what information is available, that is not funding to help us on the revenue side. And there is some discussion of a phase 4 coming from Washington that may include that type of money, but it doesn't exist right now.
Thank you. I just thought it would be helpful for people to hear, that's a big number. 2 billion is a big number. Yeah. And supposedly it was said that this will pass down to local governments too, but doesn't sound like that much will pass down to local governments, and only in order to make up expenses as opposed to new revenue.
Can we get everybody to check their mute button? We're getting some feedback from somewhere. I'm not sure where it's coming from, but anyway. Ms. Chapman, you still have the floor unless you were finished.
I just thought it would be helpful, since it was such a big article in the paper this weekend with big headlines about how much money the state was getting, and that the local governments were going to get a good bit of that it not as good as it sounded.
Right. Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Ms. Lynn?
Yes.
You? Okay.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to make a comment. I would just like to say we've read an awful lot about finances across the country of municipalities, states, and local governments, some of whom are actually begging and asking for bailouts and large infusions of cash. And I just really want to thank our staff, Eric Demora, Marcy Kotov, and all of the folks who prepare our budget, because we have planned for emergencies and we are going to have to tighten our belts. There's no question about that. But we're going to get through this, and it's because of prior planning. And that's exactly how you want to see a municipality run, because emergencies do happen. And this is one that's completely out of the blue, much larger than anybody would have ever anticipated. But yet, somehow or other, Mount Pleasant did a good job of anticipating, thanks to those folks. So I just want to thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lanning. Anyone else? All right, let's move along on the agenda to item number 7, which is discussion and possible action on enhanced COVID-19 safety practices for the operation of retail businesses during the declared emergency. Everybody was sent a copy of the ordinance that was passed unanimously by the city of Charleston last Thursday. And I talked with Mayor Tecklenburg about it over the weekend. When it failed on its first vote earlier in the week, it wasn't because, at least as it was portrayed to me by the mayor, it wasn't because it was viewed as too strict. It was viewed by some who didn't support it the first time as being part of opening things too soon. And so what they were thinking, or what they're doing in Charleston, is making sure that the buying public feels safe, helping keep their businesses in business. And everybody was sent this. I double checked it today. Mr. Pagliarini sent it to everybody last week. And if you look at it, it's things like the emergency occupancy rate, which is already spelled out in the governor's executive order, which is 5 customers per 1,000 square feet of retail space, or 20% of their legal occupancy as determined by the fire marshal, whichever is less. That's part of the governor's executive order. It has the social distancing requirements, including signage or marks on the floor to keep people 6 feet apart at checkout. It has aisles marked as one way. That way you can not worry when you go shopping that you're going to be shoulder to shoulder to somebody, that type thing. Frequent reminders about hygiene, which I think most of us see this happening anywhere. It gets a little tighter when it talks about sanitation. They want places operating under heightened hygiene, discouraging shared resources, which only makes sense. Listing high-touch surfaces and keeping a record of when high-touch surfaces were last disinfected and cleaned. Hand sanitizers. I mean, this is all just common sense stuff for now. One of the things that's in there, and this is recommended by the medical university in their guidelines for the paths to reopening our area in South Carolina, and we have all, everybody, y'all been sent this, everybody has seen this. They have the red, orange, yellow, and green. So green is normal or the new normal level of risk, all the way up to the red being the high. And everything that's in what Charleston passed goes along with these prescribed things by the Medical University of South Carolina. This is not out of Washington or the CDC. This is the Medical University of South Carolina. And they have it by industry sector: retail, arts, entertainment, restaurants, home repair, gyms, daycare, and all of those things. And so given the numbers that we're looking at now, I think we're in easily the moderate risk, maybe the high risk, depending on your interpretation of the numbers. But I think it would be a good idea, now that Charleston has these, for people, the buying public, to feel as safe in Mount Pleasant, and to think that Mount Pleasant is as concerned about the general public's health if they're going to be out buying and doing business, which we certainly want, so that they don't drive over the bridge and take their business away from our businesses and take it somewhere else. So I'd like to put that out there. I don't think the chair is allowed to make a motion. I'd like to see if someone would like to motion to that we discuss that and just get the will of council on this, please.
Mr. Mayor, can you just briefly just state that real quickly, because I was trying to listen to you. but I didn't catch all of that. Would you just state what it is you're asking us to
Sure.
discuss?
In simple forms, having looked at what the medical university sent out, and I sent it to y'all. This is called Situation Report, COVID-19 Business Recovery Support Plan, sent out by the Medical University of South Carolina to help us get our businesses open. And they have them in there by business, by select industry, and they have them in there by the risk, what the risk level to the community is. And they have these standard practices, and those practices are embodied, I won't say to every single degree, but they are embodied in an ordinance that was passed by the city of Charleston last Thursday and sent to all of us by our legal counsel. And in general, what I would like to see is if this council would like to adopt an ordinance like Charleston so that we have a level playing field for businesses and that our buying public knows what safety precautions there are for their health and well-being, especially since the governor allowed a bunch of non-essential businesses to reopen last week.
Okay, for me, I'm sorry, but I haven't had a chance to look at that document. Certainly, I want to open the businesses. I mean, we could start opening them now if you ask me. I know that these people are really hurting, but I'd like to have a chance to be able to look at that real careful before I voted on it.
Yeah, I know how you feel. I felt the same way about the parks plan. But here's an ordinance, and it was sent to everybody a few days ago. Did anybody take the time to read it? Would anybody like to discuss it?
Mayor, I'll
Yes,
make a motion.
Yeah, I'll. Oh,
All right, hang on.
I'm going to make a motion that we discuss it.
All right, we have a motion just to discuss it. Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
All right, we have a second, Mr. Rambo. That's good. Mrs. Landing,
Okay.
you have the floor.
Yes, I read it, and just in general, there were a lot of very specific things about making sure I think the mayor alluded to some of this, but things like wiping down if there's carts or there's whatever, and so many times per hour or whatever. It says promoting etiquette for coughing, sneezing, and hand washing. It says, having signs up so that people remember these things. And at the end of the ordinance, it says, because a lot of the things are the things that we're seeing when we go into the grocery stores, when we go into other stores. I haven't been out very much at all, mostly just to the grocery store. But it says right at the end that it will be enforced by a fine of $100 or up to 30 days in jail.
Yeah.
And, again, I'm sitting here saying, really? I mean, I really do believe that our businesses, and especially the big box stores have been open mostly because a lot of them have those essential items like food. And our small businesses are not going to open up if they don't feel safe doing so, and they're not going to subject their customers. So I guess I just trust our small business owners that can open up once this goes through, if it goes through, and with the governor's thing. I just believe that they can take care of things without us having to do another regulation saying this is how you do that.
I agree.
And in all of when only the essential businesses were allowed to be open, we only wrote one ticket. The chief will tell you one ticket was written, and that was written to somebody who trespassed on a place where they were no longer employed. So the way Mount Pleasant does stuff is in a very positive way. I don't think we would be out writing tickets.
Well, Mayor, let me discuss since I made the motion.
Sure.
I feel that if a business wants people to come to it, they're going to be doing what's necessary to attract clientele. It's already happening with the grocery stores. It's already happening with essential businesses. I was in a small business on Saturday that the town agreed was essential, and they were already doing the things necessary to encourage my business. So while I made the motion to discuss, I would not be in favor of passing an ordinance. It certainly wouldn't hurt from a business standpoint to have our business license folks send out something like the medical university has prepared, just to give them an example of what good business practices should be.
Right.
But I would not be in favor of passing an ordinance. I'm sorry.
Understand. Mr. Ram-
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Rambo.
is it me? Okay. Just to echo what the last few council members have said, I just feel like this is just too much government. I mean, I don't understand the point of any law or any ordinance that is essentially unenforceable. I don't know how you enforce the fact that somebody's wiped down the door handle or anything like that. I mean, to me, these aren't laws, these are guidelines. And again, like Mr. Chapman said, it's great for these to be sent out to businesses. I just don't feel like we have any business putting this in the form of an ordinance or a law.
Would council support our like Lauren Sims' office, who works with businesses and is helping businesses navigate all the loans and the assistance for business and best practices? Would y'all support them putting these out there as done? And please go back and see this email about business recovery support plan from the medical university under these levels of risk. It's great guidelines. It's a great thing to follow. And it can be good for our businesses to be able to tell the public, this is what we do to take care of you. So we hope you'll come take care of us as a business.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
This is Laura.
Hey, Laura.
Hey, I'll just say that we have been doing these things where I work, and honestly, it does make me feel more comfortable when I go to work. We wipe things down every hour. We have an entire list of what we need to do with the carts, the counters. They've put up plexiglass barriers and things. We were wearing masks for a while, but I think it's a good idea for us to put it out somehow as recommendations, because I think it can only help businesses. Because when people feel comfortable getting out there, they're going to leave their houses and go and shop. Right. And I think it can only be a good thing for the businesses, to tell you the truth, because we need people to get out and be safe and feel safe. So right. I see it as a positive thing.
Right. Mrs. Lamb.
It's Brenda.
Put the guidelines out.
Go, Brenda.
I just have a question. So are we trying to figure out if this are guidelines that we should put out, but there's not going to be an ordinance because there's no way to enforce that, of course. So are we just trying to figure out if we're going to share those guidelines with the public?
With businesses, yes.
With businesses?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the city of Charleston is enforcing it as an ordinance. So right, businesses have to comply with this. We don't want our businesses to be at a competitive disadvantage. So anything we can do to show that Mount Pleasant businesses care about taking care of their shopping public is going to help our economy.
Then I would agree with Laura that our businesses are already doing that. They're doing a great job, and customers are doing a great job of abiding by that. So I would support sharing those guidelines, but nothing else.
Great. All right. So Ms. Landing, since you head up our economic development and you've been instrumental in getting the Help Biz Stay, Shop Another Way, I think it'd be great. And she and I did along with Lauren, did at the invitation of the Mount Pleasant Chamber today, a Zoom cast that we do every Monday at 3:30. This would be a good thing, Kathy, for that whole program, if you want to call it that, promotional campaign about Help Biz Stay. This would be a good vehicle for that. You agree?
I do. And in fact, we actually talked before, Mayor, about the idea of having some kind of a website on our website to have something that if businesses want to, they can actually print off and put in their window that they are and on their website that they are following those guidelines. Yes. And that way people know, hey, this is a business that is doing their best to take care of our people. Please come shop here. We want your business, but we also want to take care of you.
Right. Like a voluntary list, and our folks are great. They come up with some great slogans and say these following businesses want you to know that they're following these best practices. And we didn't make these up. We got these from health experts. We did not make these up at the town of Mount Pleasant. So just want to be clear on that.
Community building, grassroots effort. That's ideal.
That sounds fantastic. All right. Any other discussion on that? All right, let's move to item 8, which is discussion and possible action on any recent executive orders from the governor of South Carolina and the path forward for phased reopening of Mount Pleasant. I want to remind everybody that it is the governor's executive order that does the phasing in of businesses. Town of Mount Pleasant is not doing that. The governor's executive order is doing that. I know that the governor has this plan from the medical university and hopefully is following that. But 2 things, we need to talk about how we open the town of Mount Pleasant, which we do after the governor says we can, and for business, and then opening the town hall and the functions of the town of Mount Pleasant, the municipality. And Eric, if you're on, let's update everybody about where we stand about boards and commissions.
Well, yes, sir. Thank you. Okay, thought there was an interruption there. We had explored at the staff level, working with each of our boards and commissions, the possibility of meetings in May. And that became a challenge for us in 2 respects. The first was for some of the boards and commissions that tend to have lots of data, lots of information, where things can be extremely complex. It can be difficult from a technological standpoint to have those meetings. One additional issue was in conversations with some members of boards and commissions, some just didn't feel comfortable having a meeting perhaps quite so soon. So we're in a little bit of a situation where yes, there are items starting to build up on the agendas of our boards and commissions. There's not many, but there are items that are slowing commerce, if you will, because there is no meeting of a board and commission next month. So it's been difficult to make that happen. It appears that June is the more likely month where we can get back to normalcy with boards and commissions, and that's where we are.
All right, thank you. So that would mean that if there's no planning commission meeting in May, we will not have planning items on or normal planning items on our calendar for May either, for our May meeting of council.
Things that have already gone through planning commission will be available because if my memory serves me, the last council agenda we had, we only went with things that absolutely had to go. So any other items that may be on the docket in this purgatory between planning commission and council will be there. But for the most part, Mayor, you're right. As far as the usual wave of activity that comes from planning commission, there may be a few items, but nothing that you and council are used to.
Okay. So we're not having boards and commissions, no planning commission, no BOZA, no Board of Zoning
Correct.
Appeals, no design review board, I guess. None of them, right?
Yeah, and that's really the issue. It is possible. The best way to have these meetings in May is to have them at town hall, frankly.
Right.
And because we could go ahead with social distancing, there are things we can do. We can host the meetings in our EOC, which all of you know is an expansive room. And you could put applicants out all the way to the council chambers, even outside if you had to. So there are ways to do that. The biggest reason for having them held at town hall is it provides that opportunity for public comment, which are
Right.
integral pieces of a lot of those boards and commission meetings. Very difficult for the public to be able to share their opinions through a situation much like we're dealing with now. But there just wasn't a lot of comfort to have those meetings in May.
Okay.
You know, well, I'll just stop there.
Got it. Okay. So boards and commissions are out for May, possible for June. Opening of town hall will, in terms of bringing people back, just just for functions and things. You've got a staff plan for that. I'm not sure what the trigger for that is. Is it the risk level of the prevalence of the virus in our community? Are we gonna do this in conjunction with other governments? I know there's been some talk of at least one local municipality and possibly the county opening in early May. But again, that was more aspirational. That was not really based on any data that we saw.
Yes, sir, that's correct. I've heard the same information. I think this is one of those things where each community government, each local government is built differently. And so a one-size-fits-all approach with every community going at the same time, I don't believe is the best course of action. You know, thanks to funding support over the years, you've allowed us to be able to advance ourselves pretty well technologically. And as I mentioned early on in the meeting, we're operating at full capacity with those exceptions that we mentioned. So because of that has really bought us the time and the opportunity to return to normal operations in a way that really works for us. Other communities may have different reasons for getting back sooner. Yeah. I'm not sure what all those are, but we're fine right now.
Good. All right. Let's talk about council committees for May. We are permitted to have council committee meetings by video, same way we are for full council meetings, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess if we're going to do those, they would be things since we would be looking at some normal business and things. And for the listening public, committees only make recommendations. They do not enact anything. They pass information along to full council, but when something passes committee, it is not an ordinance yet, or it's not necessarily a policy yet, with some exceptions, I know, on some things that have to do with transportation, especially. So do we, and I guess Mr. Pagliarini could weigh in, or Jeff Ulma, do we have any meetings that we might need to have in May, just for committees?
Well, I think I could go ahead and answer that, sir.
Okay.
The only meeting, I think there were two potential meetings. One we've heard tonight from Finance Chairman O'Rourke. Mr. O'Rourke was contemplating calling for a meeting during the regular schedule of committees, monthly schedule. And I believe, and Ms. Landing, forgive me if I have my facts wrong, but perhaps you had mentioned your desire to have an economic development meeting for some things that we had discussed. So it sounds like there could be a few meetings for our regular monthly schedule. And then, of course, if there are others, we're happy to organize them at the staff level.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
I think that if we could show signs, especially to our business public, that we're trying to do whatever we can, as we are, to get us back to, I hate to use the word normal, because it's not going to be normal. I think that's a good effort. And I think that you have 9 people here that are willing to do whatever it takes to get this town moving. One of the ways is to just get us back to normal. Right. First Monday committee meetings, second Tuesday council meetings. That doesn't mean you have to have a meeting. We don't have meetings, all committee meetings anyway. Right. The only thing that I would like to add, if we did that, and if we did away with the emergency order that we did 60 days ago, I would like to add that we have to have a way to deal with emergencies quickly. And since the mayor is the chair of the police, legal, and judicial, and the mayor presides over council, I think that the mayor should have we should put emergency things in police, legal, and judicial. So if they come up quickly, that would give that chair of that committee the opportunity to call an emergency meeting at any time to get things that are emergency done. But I wish that we could just say, effective today, and I'll do this in the form of a motion, is to do away with the ordinance that we started 60 days ago and get back to regular committee meetings.
Second.
Tom, are you talking about the council? Hang on a second. Council voted on an emergency. Here it is. Tuesday, March 17th. Ordinance number 20025. Is that the one you're talking about?
I can't quote the number, but I'm pretty sure that's it. It's the one that gave pretty much, since we were in an emergency situation, you and Eric, the mayor and Eric, the opportunity to sort of just handle it. And then we would resume regular committee meetings at a different time. In fact, at that meeting, I believe I asked a kind of a little weird question by saying, so we could just go on and on with this. And somebody said, no, you can't go on and on like this. At any time, the council can decide to do away with this and go back to the normal business. So that's what I was talking about.
Okay, because we got two different things. One is this ordinance of council number 20025, which temporarily suspends the normal operating procedures of Mount Pleasant Town Council meetings and authorize the town administrator to develop and enact a plan in order to ensure continuity in the delivery of government services in the light of the COVID-19 outbreak and matters related thereto. That has nothing to do with the civil emergency under Chapter 41, which is declared by the mayor. So it's two different. Let's don't conflate the issues. There's two different things here.
Okay, I apologize. I didn't know that. If you can help us all, Mayor, by talking about the second one with the civil ordinance that gives you opportunities for emergency type things.
Sure. And can somebody mute their microphone? We're getting a lot of feedback from somewhere. Sounds like a bunch of people in the background. Yeah, Mr. Pagliarini, are you on?
Julia has stepped in for him.
Yeah,
Who?
he had an emergency, Mayor. He had
Julia
an emergency.
has stepped in.
Okay. So who's on for legal? Do we have any legal counsel on?
Julia was here.
Okay. Well, I don't hear him, but here's well, I don't want to give legal advice. If you're undoing ordinance number 20025, then I'm not sure what authority Eric has to enact a plan in order to ensure continuity of the delivery of government services in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. In other words, this allowed this was for the town and the staff to do things they don't normally do because of the COVID-19 emergency, and it suspends the normal operating procedures of Mount Pleasant Town Council meetings, is what it says.
Excuse me, Mayor, I sent Julia a text and she said she's trying to communicate with you, but for some reason we can't hear her.
Well, maybe IT can help us. And the other, Tom, if I'm not sure what you were exactly asking me, so I don't want to give you a long answer that you didn't ask for.
Yeah, I'm not positive what I'm asking for. If you really want to know, and I don't know the ordinances, the details of the ordinance, and I'm not trying to be a jerk about it. The only thing I'm saying is, I think if we can get back to regular meetings, it's okay. The things that you mentioned that Eric does, I kind of think he does anyway. You know, emergency or not, Eric gets the phone call and Eric handles it, you know, and that's what we're lucky that we have right now.
Right.
What I was trying to do was to, and it's probably selfish on my part, I'd like to have every Monday committee meetings, every Tuesday council meetings, and honestly, we all work together, whether it's you, whether it's Eric, whether it's council, to get the stuff done.
You mean every month, not every Monday?
I'm sorry, every month. Yeah, holy heck. No, don't do that to me. Every Monday.
Right.
And I
Every
feel
month.
like since we're not in that I feel like I'm kind of out of the loop a little bit. And I like them.
Julia is now exiting.
We tried.
Okay.
I don't know what ordinances, and I'm not even saying we get rid of some. What I'm saying is I would like us to get back to regular committee meetings, regular council meetings. And other than that, I believe we all handle emergencies as best as we can. I don't know if I said that right.
Well, for one thing,
Mr. Mayor, may I-
sure.
No, you go ahead. I didn't mean.
The problem we have is we're in discussion for a motion that we aren't sure of because the motion that was passed on the 17th of March and has a 60 or 61
Julia
life.
is now joining.
All right, is Julia on the phone now?
I am. Sorry about that.
Okay, so here's where we are. Tom has made a motion about getting back to monthly committee meetings and town council meetings. And what I'm looking at is the ordinance number 20025 that we passed on Tuesday, March 17th. All right, so Tom, I'm not putting words in your mouth. I don't know if your motion was to alter or change that, because here's a question that I would have is, are we allowed, without this emergency ordinance of council that's passed, are we allowed to meet by video, or is that what is allowed when we have an emergency ordinance passed? Because we know.
All good questions. I do believe at a minimum, I need to take away my motion because I think it's not specific enough. And I don't think the council should be prepared to vote on something that vague.
Okay.
So I don't, no, I think the motion should be removed. So I will do that. We didn't get a second anyway.
All right. So the motion's been removed.
Well,
Okay.
I'd like to say something. So, if it's okay. May I?
Yeah, we don't have a motion to discuss, so I'm not sure under what basis we're discussing something, but
Well, I'm not sure if I'm discussing or making a motion.
okay, you got the point.
I think the clarification of what Councilman O'Rourke was saying is that we had a very urgent, very sudden situation that we needed to respond to that required day-to-day action. And that's why we had that emergency motion. So for the sake of discussion, I'd like to make a motion that by moving towards committee meetings and council meetings, whether they're allowed to be done by Zoom or whether, as Mr. Demora said, that town hall could be made safe for social distancing, cleaning, wearing masks and everything else, that we move forward and go back to having the council serve as the governing body for the town. I think we're at that point now where things are not happening day to day quite so quickly, and we need to have more input from everybody.
Okay, so do I hear what you're saying is your motion to direct the mayor to revoke the civil emergency so that every time we do something, we have a full council meeting? Is that what you're asking?
It's for the sake of discussion, yes.
No, is that in the motion or not?
That is the motion, because I believe we're at that point now where we should be able to all have input, and we've all made ourselves completely available all the time. So yes, that's the motion.
So you want to remove the declaration of civil emergency under Chapter 41 of the thing that gives the mayor the right to do certain emergency procedures. Is that your motion?
Yes.
To remove. Okay.
Second.
To remove state of civil emergency. All right. All right, we have a motion and we have a second. So this, does it also include the emergency ordinance number 20025? Do you want to remove that as well? Our question would be.
I see everybody shaking their head.
But my question is, this is an emergency meeting. All right, it's done by video. We don't have the public here and all that. My question, and I don't know if there's a lawyer on there, can we have an emergency meeting if we don't have this emergency ordinance in place? That's my question. And I'm talking about ordinance number 20025.
I'm hearing very many different questions here. If you guys want to institute a normal routine of meetings, that doesn't necessarily require the removal of the powers associated with the authority associated with Chapter 41
Okay.
and the state of emergency. If your goal is to try and initiate more meetings so you can slowly become normal as far as the meeting protocol, you guys can do that with the emergency ordinance in place still, because it gives you that opportunity. It doesn't hold you to those restrictions that are applied to FOIA and just your normal routine stated in the ordinance. With that emergency ordinance, you can suspend normal protocol, but you can also still have meetings virtually when they're needed. They don't necessarily have to be emergency meetings. Does that answer your question?
Ms. Landing?
I can't hear. Did anybody else hear that? I picked up like every other word. I have no idea what was just said.
Yeah, I got the same thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
I couldn't hear it either.
I believe what was said, if everybody can hear me, what Julia said to us was that that we can go back to having regular meetings, both committee and council, without removing the emergency powers under that civil ordinance. And so then the question is, what is the motion really?
Right.
I think we see the need for regular meetings. I don't know whether we are at that other point. Go ahead, Howard. I'm sorry.
Kathy, what she also said was that we can have emergency meetings if we're operating under normal circumstances. We have the right to do that with appropriate announcements. And we also have the right to have, by having an emergency meeting, doing it the best way we can.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right, Julia?
That is correct, Mr. Chapman.
Okay. Well, so in answer to the questions, we have the right to make, to vote on your motion. You may want to change the wording of your motion to reflect what Kathy, or what Julia said, to reflect the fact that we do have the right, if we are operating under normal circumstances, to have emergency meetings anyway. So that we don't, we would not be precluded with your motion of having an emergency meeting as needed. And how we do that, it depends on the circumstances.
So, and my question.
Mr. Mayor,
Hello?
hi, it's GM Whitley.
Hey, GM, you have the floor.
I guess my question is, and I still feel like I think the mayor asked it earlier, but I still feel like it hasn't been answered, is do we need to maintain this emergency ordinance in place in order to continue having our meetings virtually and having public comments submitted kind of ahead of time? Because I think my concern would be is I believe that Governor McMaster may be, I mean, we don't know, might be extending his state of emergency for 2 more weeks. And it just seems potentially premature for us to remove that from where we are if we need to continue. I mean, I feel like there's nothing preventing us from, like Julia said, from holding our meetings. But if the emergency ordinance is what allows us to hold them virtually, I'm not comfortable with removing that at this point in time. I'm done.
Okay, let me go back to Ms. Landing. Ms. Landing. Hello?
Yes.
Kathy.
So I had made the point about resuming regular meetings, but we weren't allowed to discuss it without a motion. So
Sure.
I will rescind my motion because my real intention is for us to be able to start having our meetings regularly.
Okay, so do we want to agree on committees as needed, the ones that are needed, and council meetings? Is that what we're talking about for May?
That's what I'm talking about, yes.
Okay.
I agree with that. That was
That
my
sounds-
intent as well.
Okay, let's agree to that. That sounds good. And we can have these emergency special called meetings as we need as well. Because with things changing the way they are, I mean, we may be doing this again this week for all we know. But we'll plan on committees and another virtual council meeting for May on the second Tuesday of May as always, the way we've been doing that.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
it sounds like we're done with that topic. Can I go back to the boards and commissions topic for a second? I think it's all under the same agenda item, but
Yes.
I don't know. I feel very strongly that we, by not having these boards and commission meetings for so long, DRB, Planning Commission, BOZA, none of them have met since February. And if they don't meet till June, some of them will experience almost a 4-month gap in between their meetings. And while architects, engineers, realtors, all of these people are working from home and continuing to do progress, our planning staff is working from home and reviewing all of this stuff. And quite frankly, the town leadership, we're not doing our part. I mean, we are completely holding up industry, and holding up projects for months on end results in people losing their jobs. I mean, this is serious stuff. And I think that I will make a motion, and I guess my motion will just be that we make every effort to resume our regular boards and commission meetings for the month of May.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and we have a second. I guess we can, somebody calling?
Yes, sir. Forgive the interruption. This is Eric.
Okay.
As to the motion, completely understand Mr. Rambo, but the staff really needs greater clarity. Every effort, and currently they're not authorized to occur. In anticipation of council possibly wanting to do this, I had mentioned the obstacles that were in the way. If council would like these meetings to happen, we can order the meetings to happen.
Okay, well, I'll amend my motion to remove the part where I say every possible, what did I say? Every possible way. All right, so I amend my motion to just say that we resume board and commission meetings for the month of May.
I'll amend my second.
And please understand.
Hold on. All right. So we have a motion that we resume board and commission meetings for the month of May. Is that it? That's the
Yes,
motion
sir.
in a second, right?
Right.
Okay. So let me just ask a question before we have, Mr. Nomura, I think y'all called a lot of them, and we may not have a quorum, or we'll have some resignations. I know one older gentleman who got in touch with me publicly. He resigned from one of our boards and commissions. So if we say they have to meet, and then they have to meet in the way that there's public input, what do we do if they either say, no, I won't meet this month, or they say, if you're forcing me to come meet, I resign, and then we don't have a quorum of the commission?
Well, certainly if there's no quorum, there's really no meeting, because no action can take place. If, we're going to do our part to make it work. If we go ahead and have the meetings in May, there are some items on particular boards and commissions that are either citizen appeals, or they are likely to require or likely to produce extensive public comment. And if we can't have the meetings inside, or people aren't going to show up, then the public may be denied that right to speak. But please know, and we're going to have to go back and try to solve this problem, and we will. And we will produce on the staff side the way to make these meetings as effective as possible. But please know, if we have them in May, that there'll be particular aspects that may not be perfect. But if this is council's decision, which is fine, we will make sure that we go as far as we can to make sure there's a quorum, and that decisions are made based on the agenda items in front of them.
Mayor,
Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Who's the female voice I hear? Is that Ms. Hyatt?
That's GM Whitley.
Hey, Ms. Whitley, you have the floor.
I think, at this point in time, if there were any commission that would meet, it would that would be necessary, or the things that are time sensitive, that would be the Planning Commission and BOZA. I mean, there's
And DRB.
Oh yeah, and because there's certain boards and commissions which are, you know, like the Culture, Arts, and Pride Commission, which there's nothing urgent there. There's no necessity for them to meet. And if there's a way, I mean, we're holding our meetings virtually with public comments submitted in writing. Is there a reason that these commissions cannot meet in the exact same way that we are meeting via Zoom and with YouTube streaming and with public comment submitted early, so that they can, I mean, why are we going to subject our volunteers to something that we aren't subjecting ourselves to?
Yeah, we're going to have to produce, we're going to have to give them town hardware to be able to conduct these meetings. It's not fair to them to have to conduct these meetings using their personal devices, because those devices will be subject to freedom of information. So we either have to do that, of which we can hustle up and do, or arrange it where we can safely conduct the meetings at Town Hall.
And then I have a secondary question, which is, is the current, under the current plan, if things don't change with this motion, is the plan to resume normal meetings in person for both the council and boards and commissions for June? Is that the current plan?
Yes.
Possibly, yeah.
And so this would be sort of pushing the schedule up by a month. Is there anything that is so urgent on these boards and commissions agendas that could not wait until June?
Well, I think that's a question for the applicant.
Yes.
I do know from conversations I've had with business owners that many are anxious to get moving. So I cannot sit here and say that none of them do not have urgency. I think some of them do. Exactly how many, I don't know.
So I think that if we are to do this, I would only be comfortable if it was in such a way that allowed the boards and commissions to meet virtually and public comment to be submitted in writing.
And as the person who made that motion, I'm totally fine with virtual meetings. That's fine with me. Either way.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
My question is, when is the first of those meetings? Which one of those would occur first?
I have to go back and check, Miss Lanning. I believe it's the Planning Commission.
And what day approximately would that be?
Third Wednesday of the month.
So is it possible that this is something that could get postponed at least until either our committee meetings next week or until our council meeting in 2 weeks? Because again, we're dealing with a day-to-day situation, and we are at that point where things are starting to get a little better. If they continue to get a little better, we may feel quite differently about this 2 to 3 weeks out.
It's possible. We have a 15-day notice requirement for items for the Planning Commission. And I'd have to, do a calendar check to see what that looks like. But I don't know if we have much time. And if I'm wrong, and I just can't recall when DRB meets, we may miss that window for announcing a meeting.
I'm just thinking third Wednesday of May is, third Wednesday of May is quite a ways away still.
Yeah.
Correct. But I was suggesting that DRB or BOZA, and forgive me again, I just can't recall. They may be meeting sooner, and there are imposed deadlines as to when those meetings have to be announced.
I understand. That's why I asked which one would be the first one.
Mayor, may I ask a question, please? This is Tom.
Hey, Tom. Yes, sir.
Eric, look, I mean, I trust you. I know that you're listening. I know that you're hearing. We want to go fast. We all want everything going. I get that. I was just curious of what are our neighbors doing? And by neighbors, not just North Charleston, and other places like Greenville and Columbia and Richland County, and they're all faced with the same discussion, I'm sure. What's going on in the other places?
Some are having meetings. We are not, because they're prohibited.
Right.
Currently. Right. But they're having them, and they're using technology to do that. And as I mentioned, if it's council's will to go ahead in May, we'll get it together and we'll make that happen for you.
Okay.
Mayor,
I'll add to that. I'm not sure what a lot of them are doing, but I know that there is a lot of public scrutiny about that. For instance, if you got a cell phone tower approved in your neighborhood in a virtual meeting where you couldn't show up and all your neighbors, all you could do is send an email. That's a hard decision to live with. Eric, are we holding court down? Are we having trials or any court thing? Or people appearing before judges or what?
No, sir. The only thing that we're prepared to handle right now would be something where there's a constitutional right at play and we have to do something quick. That's all.
Okay. But in other words, we don't, if you get a speeding ticket, you're not in there and you can request a jury trial or you're going before a judge on a speed. All that has been suspended, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Delayed, yes.
And BOZA is a quasi judicial body. So it's kind of a quasi judicial hearing, and there is a statewide effort. I know the state press association is very much against things like that being handled not in public, not in a public setting with public input. I think it's a very dangerous proposition, especially since it's the end of April, and we're talking about getting software to these people, having the virtual meetings, getting them hardware, getting all that stuff. And now telling the public, oh, in the next 30 days, there might be a very important meeting that affects you and your community. And I think it can wait 30 days. I honestly do.
Mayor.
Yes, sir.
You took the words out of my mouth. The public in Mount Pleasant deserves the opportunity to be at important meetings. And because of that, because of our social distancing that we're doing, social distancing that the governor has ordered, for us to have an important meeting of the Planning Commission, of the Board of Zoning Adjustment, those two in particular, and not allow someone to be present at the meeting, force them to write something for the meeting, I think is overkill. I think we need to recognize that while our meetings, we can do this, we're not taking any major business up that affects where I live or where my neighbor lives or where somebody in Park West lives or where somebody in the Old Village lives. When you go to the Planning Commission and have a meeting of significance for those neighborhood people, they want to be there. They want to be heard, and they don't want to write it down. They don't want to have the inconvenience of having to write it down and then maybe having a way to see the meeting or maybe not. So you took the words out of my mouth because I was ready to say what you said, but maybe a little different. But I think
Mayor,
we would be
still talking
that we would be impacting neighborhoods by going an earlier month.
Yes, who was that?
Mayor, it was me, Brenda. Just
Hey,
a question.
Brenda, you have the floor. All right.
Eric, just a question. Would back to Jake's point, would there be a way to just sort through the items that would be coming up and just handle ones that would be not controversial or not just emergency things that would just help maybe the business people get moving with projects that they've got on hold that wouldn't be that people wouldn't have that many comments about, or would that be just too subjective?
Well, it's an excellent question, Ms. Corley, but that is a very tough spot to be in.
Yeah.
Telling an applicant that they can't go through with other applicants who
Right.
submit at the same time because I or a member of staff have deemed their project too controversial.
Yeah.
I may hear about that one again somewhere.
I got you. Yeah. That makes total sense.
Mayor,
Maybe
Hang on, Mr. DeMora, were you finished?
Yes.
Ms. Corley, were you finished?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ms. Lanning? I think that's Ms. Lanning I hear.
yes, sorry, I thought Mr. Demora was through, sorry.
That's all right.
There is a little bit of a delay.
Yes.
I was just going to say, and I think most of us recognize one of the important parts of the public hearing aspect is not just that people are able to submit their concerns, but that their concerns are heard by everybody. So it's one thing for the people on the board, whether it's BOZA or Planning Commission, to be able to see that in writing or hear it. It's another thing entirely, the impact on the people in the room and other neighbors and other people. I think it is really important that for those kinds of meetings that it be a public forum. So in that respect, I think, and also the commissions have all asked to postpone till June. So unless we had something that was so big of a deal and that one issue that, gee, if this doesn't go through, something's going to happen that's really going to mess somebody up, I think we probably should wait till June.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Just to kind of circle back around, because Ms. Lanning brings up some good points. And that's exactly how I felt last month. I mean, I've had people reach out to me about this issue now for the past several months. And it seems that every month the answer is, well, we're not really ready to do it yet. And, you know, we'll push it off one more month. I mean, I don't know if you guys felt like this, but when we first did this emergency ordinance back towards the beginning of March, I mean, I had no idea that school would be canceled through the end of June and this would be a new normal. So how long are we going to continue to push things off? Because that's the answer that these people have been given. They were given that. They haven't met since February. They had a meeting, you know, something on the agenda in March. They're told, oh, never mind, you know, it's an emergency. We'll do it in April. We'll try to do it virtually. Oh, never mind, you can't do it in April either. Oh, and now we're not even going to do it in May. I mean, it's continuing to kick the can down the road, and all we're doing is holding up commerce, and we're not doing our part.
Next. All right, let's see, we had a motion and a second. Can we go back and read what the motion was, please?
Not sure who made the motion.
Do you want me to restate it, or is that for the clerk?
Yeah.
Is that a
Sure.
question for the clerk or for me?
Well, it was technically for the clerk. That's what we usually do, but I'm not sure if she's listening.
I'm here.
Do you have, and I know it's a virtual meeting, we might have to go back to Mr. Rambo. Do you have the motion?
It's my understanding that Mr. Rambo wanted to resume regular boards and commissions meetings virtually for May.
Mr. Rambo, does that sound right?
Yes,
As
ma'am.
long as they're virtual meetings.
I didn't say virtual. It doesn't matter to me whether they're virtual or, I mean, some of these boards and commissions don't meet till the very end of the month. I mean, it might be by that time okay to bring people in. We don't know. So either way, they just need to meet.
Yeah. And my second is along with those thoughts.
So that we don't have any ambiguity, is council clear that if for some reason everybody, the whole state got the all clear and these meetings could be in person, they would be in person, but if not, it's okay that they be held virtually. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, that's correct with the motion and the second?
Yes.
All right. So now that we've clarified that, are there any other questions or comments?
I still have one more. One more, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
I think we have too much speaking of ambiguity, it's very unclear whether Mr. DeMora really feels that, I mean, I know he says they'll do whatever they need to, but it is very unclear whether we can get the right software into the hands of everybody in time, whether everybody will be up and running. And then if we have the all clear and we can have meetings in the town hall, are we going to lose a lot of folks either because they're not comfortable age-wise or health-wise or whatever? So I guess I'm just trying to figure out, what are we voting on here? We're voting to open something up that we don't really have a whole lot of information.
Okay.
Mayor, I can clarify.
Well, wait, hang on. Who is that? Gary is one, and who's the other?
It was Eric, willing to clarify Ms. Landing's comment.
All right, go ahead and clarify, and then Gary, you'll have floor. Is that right?
Eric.
Okay.
Sure.
We can have the meetings in May. Council needs to be prepared that on DRB, there are multiple items that are likely to draw considerable response from the public. There are cell towers also coming our way in those boards and commissions in May. So we can make it happen. We will make it happen if that's what you like. But you have to, my comment is, please understand that you're going into this knowing that there are some big items that if it has to be virtually, the public may not be provided with the type of comment period that they're used to or they expect.
All right, Ms. Santos, you have the floor.
Well, just listening to Eric's comments, we certainly want to give the public all the opportunities. I was just going to say, the ones that didn't want to come because they were afraid to come could go virtual, and the ones that didn't worry about it could come in person. So you could kind of have both there at one time. But I agree with Eric that these people are going to want to have a say in these issues, and that might be tough if we're doing it virtually.
Mayor, can I ask one comment?
Absolutely. Sir O'Rourke has the floor.
Mr. Rambo, I love the passion that you have for this subject. I love when you have passion all the time. But one of the frustrations that you mentioned that I heard was it feels to you as if every 30 days you're told to wait 30 days. There appears to be, at least in my estimation, some pretty compelling arguments to where May could be an issue. I also am not a doctor, but I think in June, the picture may be very different than it is right now. Would you feel like this kicking the can down the road would stop if your motion was a June instead of a May? Would that help? Or do you think?
Well, I think it's important. Thank you for that question. I think it's important to realize that these three big board and commission meetings that we're talking about, planning commission is a little bit earlier, but design review board and BOZA don't meet till the end of the month. So when you're talking June, you're talking about the end of June. There's a big difference between the beginning of June versus the end of June.
All right. And things could change between now and the end of May as it relates to physicians' opinions of us maybe being in a better position than we think.
Yeah, I mean, I just think when people keep talking about the new normal, well, people are adjusting to the new normal, but government has not adjusted to the new normal, and we are not the only. There's multiple, as we're mentioned, there's multiple city and towns across the state who are holding these meetings virtually because they understand that yes, it was fine to cancel the March meetings, but as you keep canceling on and on, you're really building up a backlog.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Has everyone spoken who wants to be recognized? And I want to thank IT for coming in. Y'all know my screen is big and heavy and it was falling. It kept falling, kept grabbing it, and he came in and put some books under it. So I'm good now. Didn't mean to give any other impression. I think we're ready to vote. So a yes vote is to hold boards and commissions in May with the proviso that they can be virtual if they have to be, if all the current restrictions and all are still in place. Are we clear on that? Have we represented that well, Mr. Rambo, as the motion?
Yes, sir.
And a yes vote would be to move forward. So I'll ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Ms. Corley.
Aye.
Ms. Corley votes yes. Ms. Hyatt.
Yes.
Ms. Hyatt votes yes. Ms. Landing.
Yes.
Ms. Landing votes yes. Mr. O'Rourke.
Yes.
Mr. O'Rourke votes yes. Mr. Rambo.
Yes.
Mr. Rambo votes yes. Mr. Santos.
Aye.
Mr. Santos votes yes. Ms. Whitley.
No.
Ms. Whitley votes no. Mr. Chapman.
No.
Mr. Chapman votes no. Mayor Haney.
No.
Mayor Haney votes no. 6-3.
6-3, the motion passes. So staff will begin work to try to have board and commission meetings in May. All right, this was all under section 8 of the agenda. We talked about finance. We've talked about having council committee meetings virtually, and then of course we'll have the council meeting in May. We just voted on boards and commissions, and we heard the town administrator talk about his plan for reopening the town at the right time. Is there any other item under that particular issue?
Mr. Mayor, Ms. Whitley.
Yes.
Are we going to attempt to hold every single board and commission meeting in May? Because
that's what
9 members of each board.
Board commissions.
So CAP, the Culture, Arts and Pride, all of them, and they're all going to have town issued iPads in order to do this. I just wanted to.
That there was no limitation on it in the motion. It said boards and commissions, so that would be all of them.
Mr. Mayor, I think if they don't need to meet, then they don't need to meet. I think the most pressing boards are what we're trying to do. The biggest ones that have the biggest impact on the town. If the CAP doesn't need to meet, then certainly they shouldn't call a meeting just to show up and talk about what color they want to do something. You know what I mean? It's got to be the ones that really are important. And I think that's what Jake was trying to do is he's got the most important ones out there, but if they don't have to meet, then don't, push it back.
Can I make a comment or is it too late?
Well, I mean, we're discussing a motion that just passed, but of course,
that's my point. We could think whatever we want, but there was a motion made, a second, and then a vote.
Right.
And so that is what that motion said, was that all boards and commissions will meet. Now that, to your point, Gary, that doesn't mean they have to. They may not want to. So I'm ever the compromiser, and I know that we've had a vote and a second, but do you think there is any way that we could talk about having the boards and commissions meet the first or second week of June as opposed to the last week of June, or are we required to keep that the same timing, or is it too late because we already voted?
I mean, if you, that's the motion that passed that addressed boards and commissions. I would have to ask legal, would it be amending a motion that just passed, or would it be a totally separate motion?
It could be a motion for reconsideration.
Well, can I make one point?
Thank you.
Or ask one question along those lines? And Eric, I guess this question is for you. It's my understanding that not necessarily all of these boards and commissions meet every month anyway. I know the Planning Association associated ones, BOZA, Planning Commission, DRB. There's deadlines and things that are pressing, which was the point of my motion. It wasn't to have CAP or the Shim Creek Advisory Task Force meet. Is it not true that not every board and commission meets every month anyway? I guess that's my question.
That is so, but given council's decision, we will reach out to every board and commission and make sure that they know that they have the opportunity to meet, which, as previously under council rules, those things were. So I'll feel an obligation to reach out and let them know that if they would like to, that they can.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Ms. Whitley again.
Yes.
I have a question for Eric. Does the town have a stock of iPads sitting around that they will be able to issue to these boards of commissioners, or will this be a purchase that is going to have to be made in order to make this happen?
We'll have to purchase and make it work. So that's coming, but we'll acquire them quickly and figure out the format. And it's not, as we mentioned, other communities are doing it. So
I'd like to move to reconsider the motion and push things to the maybe start the last 2 weeks of May with and try and I don't maybe.
Well,
never mind.
Let me interrupt. You would have to have been on the prevailing side to do a motion to reconsider.
Well, never mind then.
Okay.
May I jump in on that then? I was on the prevailing side.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I just say that was my original question? When was the first meeting? And according to what I understood, the first meeting that would come up would probably be the third week or beyond of May. And that was what made me think in the first place that we might be able to have meetings. So if we are looking at meetings as far off as the third week of May, which is 3.5 weeks at least from now, things could be a little different by then. So if we already know that the first one would come up is Planning Commission, right? Would come up the third week of May.
Yes,
Does that change people's mind anyway?
That's right. It's DRB meets they meet during the middle of the month. I know Boza was supposed to meet on the 18th, but they were going to meet early because of Memorial Day and had something going on. I don't know. I'm just not sure I follow really. We're prepared to move forward and to provide the opportunities for the boards and commissions to meet. The ones that were already mentioned that are planning related, they got to meet anyway for deadlines. So we had originally planned that because of the challenges, both, as I said, technological and human, of being able to meet in May, that these boards and commissions were going to have to double up, if not more, when they started meeting again, say in June. So that we were preparing to have multiple meetings, sort of back to back.
All right. Well, I think we can move on. We had a vote. There was a 6-3. It passed by 6-3. Unless a member of the prevailing side wants to bring up a motion to reconsider, I think we're done with that issue. Any objection to that?
I thought that was the motion Ms. Landing made, was to reconsider.
I didn't hear a motion. I'm sorry.
Ms. Landing, did you not make a motion?
No, I didn't make a motion. I said that I was on that prevailing side, and I was trying to clarify because that was my original question about the later in May, as Ms. Whitley was talking about, that we wouldn't be having any meetings. So now I'm hearing that it's not later in May, that we actually might have meetings as early as the middle of May. So if we're talking about meetings 2 weeks from now, that definitely changes the circumstances. That's why I asked the question.
But you didn't make a motion to reconsider.
No, I didn't make a motion yet because I was waiting to hear the answer from Mr. DeMora.
DRB typically meets at the end of the month. Boza was supposed to meet on the 18th, and the Planning Commission is the third Wednesday. So you're right. I mean, typically they're in the second half of every month. So yes, there is some time to to prepare.
There's also time that if something happens and we have anything at all that causes us to really be concerned about the fact that this really was too quick, that it looks to me like we could actually have another emergency meeting. I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to take this slowly, but yet at the same time get some of these more urgent things addressed. So it doesn't mean we can't change that.
However, the order to buy them all, what type of computer will we buy in, Mr. DeMora? And you'll probably have to order those tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Likely an iPad situation, like the same ones that are issued to yourself and council members.
Okay.
Can I just ask, shouldn't that have been part of our discussion up front? I mean, maybe it was a question that should have been asked up front, which I'm at fault as well as everyone else, but what we're talking about, how many members? I know we have at least 9 of one of those, maybe 10. I mean, are we talking about tens of thousands of dollars all of a sudden?
Well, the motion did say boards and commissions, so we're gonna, whether they decide to meet or not, because the motion said boards and commissions meet if at all possible in May, I don't see how Mr. DeMora can be put in a position to pick and choose which ones get new iPads and which ones don't, and then all of the IT help to show them how to use Teams and everything, and then we're assuming everybody has the broadband to do it. And this is one reason I voted no on this. And if a member of the prevailing side wants to reconsider, we either need to do it now or move on, because we have a 6-3 vote instructing Mr. DeMora to do all this.
I'm sorry, but yeah, I have two kids. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I have the floor for a second?
Yes, you may.
I mean, I have 2 young kids in elementary school, and they get on their Zoom every single day without issue. It's literally, you set up a link, somebody clicks the link and they're in the meeting. They don't have to download software, none of that. It's the same way as you guys know, as the chair of the Water Supply Committee, I serve on Water Commission. Water Commission has been doing Zoom meetings every couple of weeks since this started, and I literally get sent a link that I don't download anything on my computer.
Yes.
Or anything like that.
Either we have a reconsideration motion, or we got to move on.
If I don't hear a motion to reconsider, this item is closed. The motion has passed by a vote of 6-3. All right. So we're
Mayor?
Yes.
Mayor, this is Laura. I'll make a motion to reconsider.
All right, you were on the prevailing side. You have a
Yes.
motion to reconsider. Is there
I
a
feel
second?
like we might need to do that.
Is there a second from a member of the prevailing side?
I'll make a second.
Was that Ms. Landing? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, there was a delay. All right. So we have a motion to reconsider and we have a second. May I ask legal, I've got my handbook here. Hold on just a second. Legal, do you have any advice on a motion to reconsider? I'll look it up real quick.
You guys are doing it the right way. Someone on the prevailing side has made a motion, got a second. Now you guys can discuss and vote on a completely different motion.
Okay. So
Can I ask a legal question?
absolutely.
So I think part of the confusion, it sounds like, is that my motion, and I apologize, kind of left it open to all boards and commissions. Is there a way to, I guess reconsidering the motion would be, or reconsidering what we did would be rescinding the whole thing. Is there a way for me to clarify that it would be Planning Commission, DRB, and what's the other one? BOZA? Is there a way for me to clarify that? And
And to
revote?
move those meetings to the end of the month? Is there any way to do that?
They kind of, I think they all already are the very towards the end of the month. They're all 2018 and later.
Okay,
One
hold
on
on,
the 18th.
hold on a second. Hold on a second before we lose order here. Part of the reason for the timing of those, and legal or Eric, jump in if you will, is the timing of the applications and the notices and all of that. So before we just talk about magically moving dates and everything, let's find out from the people who have to work with these things if that is in fact something that's doable or if that's going to create chaos and legal questions. So this is for legal or for Eric?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and say, the dates are set by ordinance, and so the dates are what they are. Given that, to address Mr. Rambo's comments, you could certainly say allow for a limited amount of meetings of boards and commissions to happen in May. You could certainly limit it to the ones that you mentioned, Mr. Rambo, and then we could be focused narrowly on those three only. And by the way, as to costs, I did mention the technological issues that exist. Zoom's great, but it's unsecure. And I would never recommend, and our IT people don't recommend the town use products like that. Any iPads that we use to support the boards and commissions, you can bet will be retrieved when things return to greater normalcy and there are meetings in person again. And we'll use those iPads just as, instead of having to buy ones along the way.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Eric.
Okay, I'm just checking I'm checking Robert's rules on a motion to reconsider to see if that means that there has to be a new motion or if we're just reconsidering what has already passed.
Okay, so this is how it reads. To properly handle a motion to reconsider,
Yes.
the person on the prevailing side votes as a second, and you pick up debate as if you had not voted on the original motion.
Great.
The chair reads the motion to reconsider. Once debate is over, members vote on the motion to reconsider, which I assume would be a restated motion, as Jake or Mr. Rambo mentioned. If the motion to reconsider passes, the original motion is brought back before the assembly to be voted on again.
Great. Okay. So this is not a motion for what the motion itself, underlying motion would say. We need to vote to reconsider. And is that a majority or a supermajority vote by Robert's rules?
Majority.
Majority vote. Okay.
Can I clarify one thing, Mr. Mayor?
Well,
So
hang on.
if it's rescinded, no, legal question, I'm sorry.
Sure.
If we vote to reconsider, then what you're saying is it goes back to the original motion, so then I can amend that motion and it be revoted on.
Sure, you can amend it or withdraw it, withdraw the second, start all over again.
Okay.
Whichever's
all right.
easy.
I got it. Thank you.
Sure.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, if the motion to reconsider passes, we go back to the motion as written, as it was voted on, but it's as if it was not passed. Is that correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, I think so, but we would still have that motion. So Mr. Rambo, that's where that would be.
Thank you.
Right. So would the clerk please call the roll on a motion to reconsider? This is not on the underlying motion. This is just whether or not we may reconsider, please.
Ms. Hyatt.
Yes.
Ms. Hyatt votes yes. Ms. Landing.
Yes.
Ms. Landing votes yes. Mr. O'Rourke.
Yes.
Mr. O'Rourke votes yes. Mr. Rambo.
Yes.
Mr. Rambo votes yes. Mr. Santos. Mr. Santos? I believe your microphone is muted.
Sorry, yes.
Mr. Santos votes yes. Ms. Whitley?
Yes.
Ms. Whitley votes yes. Mr. Chapman?
Yes.
Mr. Chapman votes yes. Ms. Corley?
Yes.
Ms. Corley votes yes. Mayor Haney?
Yes.
Mayor Haney votes yes.
So we are back to the motion that says that boards and commissions will meet in May virtually if need be. So Mr. Rambo, why don't we go back?
Mr. Mayor, yes, can I would like to amend my motion. Instead of saying all boards and commissions, it would be the planning commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, and the Design Review Board will hold meetings in May.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. Hang on just a second. Counselor, is that an amendment? Would we be voting on an amendment, or do we just have a whole new motion now?
Well, the way Mr. Rambo stated that, I believe it's an amendment to the motion. So let's vote on the amendment, then the motion, or then the final, the original.
Okay.
Can I?
Yeah, make it easier. Just withdraw.
Okay, I'm going to make it easy. All right, I withdraw my original motion.
Thank you.
And now I would like to make a motion that the Planning Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, and the Design Review Board hold May meetings.
Much simpler. Thank you.
And now I need a second.
My second reflects that.
Got it. Thank you. That is much simpler.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So do we have discussion on any of those items? I still have questions about the dates, about the notice. Not that I'm going to ask you to answer them again, but those are big questions in my mind. It hasn't changed my mind at all about those. Council? Anyone want to be recognized?
Yes, sir, Mayor. I still have reservations for the general public. These meetings are held not just for the council members and the people who are making the applications, but most importantly, they're held to allow the public to see their government in action. And that's not going to happen.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, we will go ahead and go. Yes.
Can I just ask Eric one question? As far as public access, could we not, I know that these meetings are not typically live streamed, but since if you would not be able to physically be there, we would certainly have an opportunity for them to be live streamed. Is that correct? Similar to the way this one is?
Yes.
Okay.
I also have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. My question real quick is it possible to change the format of public comments so that instead of just having them emailed in ahead of time that we actually, or voicemail, that we actually do allow people to come on and speak? Because that's how we do it in a live meeting, and I'm not quite sure why they don't have that opportunity in the virtual meeting.
Mr. Nemore.
Mayor, I need to apologize. I wasn't prepared to answer these questions tonight. I don't know. I have to say, I think that could be very problematic for the chairperson of those committees to maintain order.
Exactly.
Not being able to know who that is, what their name is for sure. Are they a town resident or not? I mean, these are serious challenges, and if the question is it possible? I'm sure it's possible. Is it something that each board and commission may want to do? I don't know.
Okay. Any other questions before we vote on the new motion for planning, BOZA, and DRB to meet in May one way or the other? All right, a yes vote is affirmative to have those meetings in May, and no vote keeps things like they are, where we're looking at possibly June. So would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Landing.
Yes.
Ms. Landing votes yes. Mr. O'Rourke.
Yes.
Mr. O'Rourke votes yes. Mr. Rambo.
Yes.
Mr. Rambo votes yes. Mr. Santos.
Yes.
Mr. Santos votes yes. Ms. Whitley.
No.
Ms. Whitley votes no. Mr. Chapman.
No.
Mr. Chapman votes no. Ms. Corley.
Yes.
Ms. Corley votes yes. Ms. Hyatt.
No.
Ms. Hyatt votes no. Mayor Haney.
No. So
Mayor Haney votes no.
by my count, the motion passes by a 5-4 vote. All right, we don't have a motion to reconsider now, do we? Okay. Unless I hear anything else for the good of council, item number 9 is to adjourn. Hearing none, this council stands adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
+1 8 4 3 5 6 8 2 6 2 1.